and I am broadcasting to you live from the Camino Hermitage on Camino Island. I'm looking out over a glassy sea, a bay, an ocean bay. I can't see the beautiful Cascade Mountains because of summer haze, but the view is beautiful, the air is completely still, and the temperature is just perfect. So today I'm going to do the second broadcast on, not strictly speaking, Yogananda's unpublished writings. I'll go back to that in my next broadcast. But having completed Deepak Chopra's book, The Future of God, I decided to share with you a few things that I found not just inspiring, but also practical. Now, mind you, I don't think this book is for most of you watching this, but you might have a friend or relative who goes very much by the reasoning mind, including by science. Maybe somebody from Missouri, as we like to say. And for somebody like that, who's nonetheless not adamantly atheistical, perhaps agnostic, I think they would find Chopra's book useful. It's mostly psychologically oriented with a good deal of practical science and leading-edge science involved with it. He divides reality, if you will, human reality, in three parts: materialistic, and then reality of faith, and then the reality of connection with God. Now, this parallels the yoga teachings that Yogananda represents, which is to say the three universes or worlds and levels of consciousness, of matter-bound, energy and feeling-oriented, and finally transcendent consciousness. And he does use some of those terms in here, but he uses mostly matter or material, faith, and connection. Okay? And the purpose of the book is to demonstrate, not to prove the reality of God. He understands with his Indian background that that's not rational, but to give a person who is open ways by which they might explore their life and their consciousness and their own awareness in order to achieve an actual transcendent experience rather than merely to believe in such a thing, or equally useless to deny it. But for you and I thought I would share some aspects. It's uninteresting to me to talk about any insights he'd have on the level of matter or the five senses. I think most of us watching this are on a different level. But I thought it was useful that he introduces the reader I just described to the concept of faith by, as I have done in my classes too, to suggest that a person think about where they express faith in themselves, faith in the world even of matter. And so he writes, it takes faith to believe in yourself, to believe in progress, to accept that reasoning solves problems, to trust your emotions and feelings, to reach moments of insight, to see beyond the surface level of things and to trust what you, he says see, but I don't think he means with the eyes, to let your body take care of itself. In other words, to trust the healing properties, the healing power of the body, and to feel bonded with another person. Each of these things, I think, even rationalists, materialists, without obviously thinking very deeply about it, I think anybody like that with a certain amount of intelligence and awareness would see, yes, of course, I have an experience of and faith in and a connection to a subtle world, something beyond just my reason or my five senses that I use all the time. Now, I'm going to shift here because I'm just cherry-picking points I thought to share with you. He tells a delightful story about Indian goddesses, because he's Indian and brought up with this, that illustrates in a kind of archetypal form, story form, the basic teaching we find throughout humanity's experience, that if you live a dharmic life, all these things, as Jesus said, will be added unto you. In other words, if you live by virtue, live a virtuous life, whether you're a Stoic or go by devotion, that the things of the world, in effect, follow you or come to your door. Patanjali put this in the Yoga Sutras, but I'm just going to read what he told in this delightful story. There is a story in the Vedic tradition about a young man who went in search of the secret of abundance. For many months he traveled through the countryside until one day, deep in a forest, he met a spiritual master and asked him how to make his dreams come true. "What do you really want?" the master asked. The student replied, "I want to have untold wealth, but not for selfish reasons." The young man replied earnestly, "I want to use it to help the whole world. Can you please tell me the secret of creating such abundance?" The master nodded yes. He explained as follows. In the heart of every human being there are two goddesses. Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth, is generous and beautiful. If you worship her, she may bestow you with treasures and riches, but she is capricious and may also withdraw her favors without any warning. The other goddess is Saraswati, the goddess of wisdom. If you venerate Saraswati and dedicate yourself to wisdom, Lakshmi will become jealous and pay more attention to you. The more you seek wisdom, the more fervently Lakshmi will chase you, showering you with wealth and abundance. And I thought that was a charming story to illustrate the basic principle. By the way, that principle was illustrated in the famous book of Job in the Old Testament. And Chopra, I'm not going to get into it, it's complicated, but Chopra gives the clearest, most insightful, wisest interpretation of the book of Job that I have ever come across, including my own. But it's because the book of Job illustrates some very deep principles. Maybe some other time I'll share that. Now here, I've cherry-picked little questions, little insights that you can use that illustrate the extent to which we draw on the subtle world of conscious, not just consciousness pure, but the energy world, the astral world. This is what yoga is involved with. Using energy and using the innate intelligence of energy. So here are some typical experiences that you might have that show that you touch the level of transcendence. You feel light, unburdened, and unbounded. Now this isn't all the time, but you have experiences of being free. You see common humanity in every face. You feel completely safe. You enjoy being for its own sake. A calm stillness appears inside of you. Infinite possibilities appear before you. You feel wonder and awe looking out over nature. You surrender, accept, and forgive. You are certain that everything matters, that everything happens for a reason. You feel that perfect freedom is the most natural way to live. Now, because the book is oriented towards helping a person to become a seeker of truth, he gives this he gives this description of what makes a seeker. The desire to be real, to be honest. The courage to step into the unknown. A refusal to be fooled by illusions. The need to feel fulfilled. The ability to go past and beyond material sensory fulfillments and satisfactions, an intimation of other levels of existence. Then later he goes on in three things I thought were very well done. He says, when you begin to suspect that you are the author of your own existence, seeking has begun. When you start to use your awareness to actively shape your life, seeking has brought an answer. When you look around and know that reality is based entirely on consciousness, seeking has reached its goal. Well, I don't know about that last statement, but still I thought the three levels were very helpful. Now, hints from the subtle world of consciousness, of transcendence, he gives some examples here. Some of them are more mundane than others, but I'll share them. You have an aha or eureka moment. You feel a burst of heightened reality, as if suddenly things around you become clear. You're struck by awe and wonder. You're visited by a pervasive sense of peace and calm. Inspiration comes to you in a leap of creativity. Events in your life seem to form patterns, and you realize what the pattern is. In my mind, I connect that more with patterns of your behavior, patterns of how people respond to you. When you begin to realize that these patterns and in your relationships, especially in behaviors, you begin to awaken to these patterns. Unexpectedly, you feel loved, but not by any particular person, but simply loved. You think of a person's name and the next minute they call you. A random word comes to mind and then you run across it in reading or conversation. You foresee an event and it comes true. You have a particular desire and it's fulfilled on its own. I think of Swami Kriyananda's little story about how he had a fleeting wish for some Swiss chocolate. This was long ago when he was a young monk, where chocolate wasn't exactly a part of everyday life back then, in the 50s and in the monastery. And then suddenly out of the blue, one of the members of the organization there sent to him a box of Swiss chocolates, not knowing anything about his wish. For a whole day, things seemed to organize themselves, falling into place without any effort. You feel the presence of someone who has passed away. I certainly have had that with my father. You detect charisma, a strong personal force from another person, or feel a radiation of pure love or holiness from another person. You feel that you're guided, and you feel that your life has a purpose which goes beyond your own desires. Okay, now a few more things, and I'm going to end with some poetry. Here comes the garbage truck. How nice. Here he gives signs of spiritual progress. I'll list them again. I found his lists to be useful. It takes less effort to get to a result. You feel less stress about getting a good outcome in what you're doing. People begin to cooperate with you more easily. You seem to feel that everything will be just fine. You start to have, quote, strokes of luck. Events mesh together in a synchronous fashion. These are all aspects of something very similar, that sense of connection with the world and meaning and purpose. Creative solutions appear as if out of nowhere. Now, internally, you might begin to feel that your internal dialogue quiets down. Negative responses diminish. You resist and control impulses more easily. A sense of meaning grows, even if the details of that meaning are not necessarily consciously present. You begin to feel cared for. You feel less regret over the past and less anxiety about the future. decision-making becomes clearer and easier. Now I want to close with some poetry readings. This first one is everyone's favorite, everyone's favorite poet, which is Rumi. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Now, this next poetry, he doesn't give the source. He says, in India as a child, afternoons were filled with the sounds of kirtan, group singing of devotional songs. And then he gives this English translation, very poetically done, but he doesn't give the source. But I think you'll like it. In the still of the night, from the darkness comes a light, and I know in my heart it is you. When the fire in my soul burns longing for the goal, then I know in my heart it is you. And lastly, some Tagore poetry. Chopra seems either personally inspired or wants to inspire the reader to go beyond the baggage associated with the G word, the God word. And so he makes note that in these Tagore poems that I'll read to you, God isn't even mentioned, similarly with the Rumi poem I just read. So we'll end with this. Listen, my heart, to the whispering of the world. That is how it makes love to you. And this final one I'll end with from Tagore, Rabindranath Tagore. I grew tired of the road when it took me here and there. I married it in love when it took me everywhere. Okay, great souls, the future of God is now. As Paramahansa Yogananda would thunder in his lectures, the time for knowing God has come. All righty.